Welcome to the podcast about investing in startups, where existing investors can learn how to get the best deal possible, and those that have never before invested in startups can learn the keys to success from the venture experts. Your host is Nick Moran, and this is The Full Ratchet.
Welcome to another special release of Investor Stories. On this installment, the experts discuss a startup that they did not invest in, why they passed, and if there was a key learning that now informs their approach. Here is the segment called Why I Passed. On today's special segment, we have Brendan Wallace of Fifth Wall Ventures. Brendan, can you tell us a story about a startup you passed on and or mention reasons you commonly pass?
Yeah, so I don't want to say specific names, but I can talk generically about a reason why we sometimes pass on companies. Oftentimes companies, and I find this in real estate, fintech, it's especially prevalent. Companies are solving problems that have already been solved. There are a lot of companies that are trying to increase liquidity and increase transparency on the commercial real estate side of the world, different than the residential world. And frankly, there actually are a lot of solutions, and those markets are fairly liquid and fairly transparent, far more so than on the residential side. And I think one of the reasons we've passed on a few companies is that entrepreneurs ideated great approaches that I think like solutions to a particular problem that didn't really exist. It existed notionally or it existed as an idea, but they just didn't know enough about real estate capital markets to know that there actually were structures and products that allowed investors to make a particular kind of investment or structure a particular kind of security. So I'd say what's really important for entrepreneurs to do in the real estate tech world is make sure you understand your ecosystem. Make sure you understand what are the set of solutions out there. Don't make the assumption that something doesn't exist when it very well may. It just isn't known by Silicon Valley and kind of the generalist VC world, because real estate is such a large capital market. There are so many financial products and so many players in it that you really have to build that knowledge set before you launch into building a quote disruptive solution.
Good lesson for any sector, actually. On today's special segment, we have Bilal Zuberi of Lux Capital. Bilal, can you tell us a story about a startup you passed on, how the situation played out, and why you passed?
Are you looking for an anti-portfolio?
You got it.
Yeah, of course. So look, I spent 15 years in Boston. I knew the Boston ecosystem really well. I was an MIT grad, knew a lot of startups coming out of MIT, and it's a hotbed of innovation. And I have several investments in Boston. Several years back, I met a company that was just spinning out of MIT Media Lab. There's a bunch of young students that were building a 3D printing technology that was highly differentiated from sort of the glue gun on stepper motor technique. I looked at that company, and this company was called Formlabs. And I think I did not appreciate enough, how differentiated their technology actually was from all the other companies, talking about moats as we were doing earlier. This company seemed to have a moat, but I kind of lumped them up with the other plastic 3D printing companies, which they were not. And I think I also underestimated the founders' passion and motivation to persevere and build this. They were young students, and I thought that to compete with an increasingly competitive space, they would first need to go out and recruit some industry experts because the industry had grown up pretty fast. Well, I did pass on the company investing in the seed round. I did not invest. Had I invested, I would be a happier person now. The company has done well. Those founders have shown the world that their technology is used. In fact, almost every technology startup, at least in our portfolio, that's doing hardware that I visit, have one of those printers in their offices. So Clearly they've done something well. Still work ahead of them, but I think they did a really good job, and shame on me for not investing.
Yeah. Some of the toughest passes I've ever made are just amazingly ambitious and engaged and passionate founding teams that for some reason I just don't feel like have maybe the right market fit or product market fit with the team or the right experience set, but they're probably going to come back to haunt me.
Yeah. Look, one of the general lessons that I've picked up over 10 years of investing is that the venture industry and the startup industry changes a lot every 2-3 years, and you can't hold the same ideas constant across time. As I mentioned, I looked at a set of 3D printing companies. I thought they were all similar. Then I passed on Formlabs. and I should not have passed on Foam Labs. And had I kept my thesis of not investing in printers because they will eventually become commodity, I would have missed on investing in Desktop Metal, which is a printer company and arguably one of the most successful companies in our portfolio. But I think we were, I would say, part smart and part humble enough to revisit our thesis and constantly question ourselves, that I think we were able to course correct and find a great investment.
On today's special segment, we have Joe Medved of Lair Hippo. Joe, can you talk a little bit about the anti-portfolio? It could be a good pass, could be a bad pass. Tell us a story about a startup that you passed on.
Sure. So I think my favorite, or maybe I should call it my least favorite one. So when I had started, I started at this fund I mentioned earlier called Constellation Ventures, which was part of Bear Stearns at the time. And I think it was about 2004. We were actively focused on the digital media space. And I can remember walking down the street with my brother-in-law, who at the time was at Columbia. And he said, hey, I have these friends, or he was like, hey, have you heard of the Facebook? And I said, no. He says, how come you haven't heard of the Facebook? How can you call yourself an investor? And it turned out he was friends because he was at Columbia. He said, I have some friends at Harvard who started this thing. And so he had some buddies that were involved with Facebook. I looked into it, and I looked at some of the early metrics that had been posted publicly. I went, wow, this is amazing. And so I'd been at Constellation, I don't know, maybe 6 months. And I put together this sort of detailed email. I said, I think this is a really interesting company we should look at. And I was pretty, junior and fresh there. And I'd come from investment banking where you are not necessarily taught to speak your mind all that much. But I kind of went out and I put this together, and I was really excited about it. And I circulated an email to the group about it. And I said, I really think we should look at this company. And it was crickets. Nobody responded. And so I was like, oh, maybe this was a stupid idea. Maybe I shouldn't have recommended this. So I unfortunately never followed up on trying to move forward with that investment, which obviously I regret at this point. And I'm not saying that we could have gotten into it anyway at that point. I'm sure Jim Breyer was all over those guys, but it's certainly one that I recall. And I remember I never am afraid to speak my mind now when I think there's an interesting opportunity, because that would have been a really nice company to have invested in at that stage.
Wow. The tough ones early in the career. I've had some of those. When I'm circulating a deal to, other syndicate partners, I'm kind of reticent. I'm like, ooh, are they going to like this, or do they think it's good enough? And it's tough.
It's always tough. The challenge is too, honestly, and people always say this, and it's, I don't know that it's completely true, but often the most interesting companies are the ones that are so divisive, right?
Right.
I can think about, partner meetings I was in where we came out, and even at SoftBank at one point, we had like 8 or 9 partners at one point when I was there. I can remember distinctly walking out of, one investment meeting with a company that we walked out and everyone's like, this is the fund maker. This is going to be amazing, incredible outcome. And it was a complete zero at the end of the day. Right. And then we've had others that were, very divisive that ended up being very successful investments. Right. So it is challenging. You get excited about something. Maybe it's in an obscure space. You reach out to people. Like the example of Ben with Casper. Everyone thought that was kind of silly. There's no frequency of purchase.
Yep.
And lo and behold, it's been a phenomenal company. Right.
Interesting. That will conclude this installment of Investor Stories. If you're enjoying the program and would like to see it continue, take a moment and leave a 5-star review in iTunes. Also, if you'd like updates on new content from TFR, as well as the top 10 VC articles every week, go to fullratchet.net and sign up for the newsletter. Okay, that will wrap things up for today. Until next time, over-prepare, choose carefully, and invest confidently. Thanks for joining me.